Okay, so if you could just review what the changes are for our public session, to review what the changes are from our last version of this, what has changed?
Sure. So the primary change is, instead of identifying all hate offenses as constituting a...
So the red, just to clarify, the red is the newest language.
Exactly.
And the black, okay. And the underlined black is the previous new language.
Exactly. Everything that's underlined would be new, but the black is, you've already looked at the red. This is the first you've seen it. Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
So previously, the language indicated that any sort of, I'm using the shorthand term, hate offense would be declared a public nuisance. This doesn't declare all hate offenses public nuisance. It does clarify the definition of what is a public nuisance, which would include any damage to public property in violation of the graffiti ordinance. But it would have to be public property to constitute public nuisance. And then it also creates a private right of action, which the previous language did. But in this case, we're relying upon our charter authority to do so in section 54 of the charter specifically. So if a person is within a group that's targeted by somebody who violates a city ordinance with the intent to intimidate or harass somebody on the basis of a protected classification, they're presumed under this language to suffer a minimum of $100 in damages, which would allow them then to bring a private right of action to seek their damages and abate the violation if it's likely to recur. And they would be entitled, if they prevail, to attorney's fees. But there would also be, if somebody uses this for wrongful purposes, there would be fee shifting if they lost and it's shown that they were abusing the ordinance provision.
And did you change the entitlement to attorney's fees previously? And this is a question, previously a petitioning plaintiff could recover attorney's fees. They didn't necessarily have to prevail in the previous version, or did I misunderstand?
No, they have to prevail.
They always had to prevail.
The attorney's fees have stayed the same. The only thing is, since it's not a nuisance action, I use the term defendant respondent, but substantively, that provision is the same. So I guess what I'll say is there's basically three outcomes. Outcome one, the plaintiff wins, they get their attorney's fees. Outcome two, the plaintiff loses, but it's not shown that they brought the lawsuit for wrongful purpose. Everybody covers their own attorney's fees. Option three, the plaintiff loses and the defendant shows that the plaintiff brought the lawsuit for wrongful purpose. Then it's actually the plaintiff who bears the defendant's attorney's fees. And that was the case with the prior language too.
Okay. And so if there is new language added that includes if the damage is to public property, so if the graffiti is on public property, you have different rights than if somebody graffitis City Hall, that's different rights than if somebody graffitis the YMCA.
Right. If it's City Hall, then it's a public nuisance and the city attorney's office can sue to abate the public nuisance. If it's somebody's private property, if you damage somebody's private property, you already have under the common law private right of action for the damage. But then also, if you're the person being targeted by the graffiti, if it's meant to intimidate or harass somebody, this would create the private right of action for the person being targeted.
So, what is the real effect of, it's exactly the same graffiti on City Hall versus private property. Exactly what is the difference in the action that can be taken without citing like different parts of law where you can work around these different things, ultimately, what are the rights that we have as owners of a public property versus the owners of a private property?
So if it's public property, then it's a public nuisance, and the city can come in and bring an abatement action. An abatement action means that if we suffer actual damages, we can recover damages, but even if we don't suffer actual damages, we can get a court order telling the person don't do it again. And if they do it again, they're have to. If it's on private property.
Wait, by definition, if somebody graffitis the property, didn't we suffer damages?
Yes, but it's when something's a nuisance, in addition to recovering your damages, you can also get an order from the court making it stop. It's just a remedy that's available.
Okay. Can you hear this, Gene?
Yes.
Okay.
If it's private property, they already would have had their own trespass or nuisance cause of action for it under the common law. We don't need to create that here. That already exists. It's the common law. When I say common law, I mean sort of old.
I know what you mean by that.
Very good. So that right already exists. We don't need to create it by ordinance, and private property owners have the ability to be able to take care of that. So E says it's a public nuisance. We can sue for abatement as a city and collect any damages. And F says that in addition to whatever rights anybody might have, whether it's public or private, and it's not just graffiti, but any violation of the city code, if it's done with the intent to show to intimidate or harass on the basis of a suspect classification, then whoever's being targeted with the intimidation or harassment also is presumed to suffer damages and has the ability to sue to make it stop.
But on the private property, are you saying that they don't have the right to get a court order to make somebody stop?
So,
Like, it's illegal. Weren't they supposed to stop before they started? I don't really understand what's the benefit of this.
well, let's say that the person being targeted doesn't own the property. Without this, they wouldn't have a right to.
I'm not talking about a person being targeted. I'm talking about the difference between the public nuisance, which doesn't have to do with the person being targeted. It's just that you graffitied a piece of public property versus the private property. You said, if I understood you correctly, you said the difference is you can get a court order that they must stop.
Right.
And on the private property, you can't get that court order that they must stop.
The private property owner probably has their own trespass and nuisance cause of action already, so they could go into court and get rid
And
of it.
trespass is more complicated for a public property where people have rights to be there.
It can be.
We get to that later.
Yeah. Exactly. But then in addition, what F adds is whoever's being targeted, whether it's public or private property, whether it's their property or not, if they're being targeted, then they're presumed to suffer damage, and if that person is being targeted also has a right to seek damages.
So can I jump in with an example question?
Yeah,
So like if there's a business downtown and somebody paints a swastika on the side of it and I have a Jewish person, then I could bring damages
Right,
on that.
right, because
Even if I don't own the building, I don't even know who lives there, it just, I live in Burlington, seeing that symbol is disturbing to me. And so I can bring, this allows me to do that.
yeah, not only disturbing but threatening.
Right.
If the intent is to intimidate or harass, then it's effectively threat. And yeah, you suffered damage because they targeted you and everybody was a member of the same classification.
And if, without this change, that's not an
Exactly.
option.
apparently we removed Sharon Busher, which is preventing her from getting back in.
Oh, I didn't know that would happen.
I know, this maybe. And
And I'm not sure how to fix that.
She should be able to, she's trying to get on yesterday.
It popped up on the screen and then you clicked it before it said if you kick her out, she won't be let back in, but
Oh,
I just saw it out of the corner of my eye and then it was,
Maybe I
and
can
I forgot to say.
ask her to call in. Just asked her to call in.
okay.
You gotta go to your new settings.
Is there here?
Yeah, I'll log on as a panelist, and then you can co-host me, and I can try to look at it while you're, see if we can get it back.
Okay.
I think it's in the meetings settings, like, you have
Got
to
it.
toggle it to allow user to rejoin after being.
Let's see, where are
Okay.
settings? So,
I'm at the beginning of it. I'll sign in,
You might need to go to like the Zoom.
the actual account.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so, sorry, I'll step back and listen. Technology and Eric Doctors.
I'm gonna ask you another question.
Yeah.
Or you said,
Yes.
so there is graffiti and stickers all over this town right now. Is there a difference between, like, what exists now? Like, what if, somebody says, well, you can't bring that case against me under this new ordinance because I put that sticker up in May. Or I did that graffiti in May. What's the kind of grandfathering of everything that exists versus?
And that's a good question. I mean, the US Constitution says no ex post facto laws, and what you're describing, if we were to try to enforce this against somebody who did it before it became the law, that would be an ex post facto law. So that would be a defense, and that there's no way around that.
I have another question. Building on what John just said, I agree with a lot of what is here, but at the same time, I think we had Chief Murad on and he said something about, I don't think the city has ever, at the police department, I think he said, they've never interrupted anyone's act of graffiti for, it's been years. They're just not like enforcing that. And so I just wonder, I think that's really important. If we're gonna update this ordinance, there needs to be some increased enforcement or something that will actually make a difference. So is that, that's not necessarily your area, Eric, but I think it's important for us to talk about that.
It's not necessarily my area. It is important to talk about. The only thing that I can suggest in terms of the enforcement is this also does include language that's not in this town. To create a system for people to report graffiti and to make it easier to enforce, and that would be all graffiti. So that we can be enforcing our graffiti ordinances more universally, hopefully. But the implementation rests with.
Any other questions on this? Is the committee ready to move this forward?
Yeah, I would just note for Becca that if you go to the graffiti portion and you look at the penalties, that it allows for a prosecuting officer, not necessarily a police officer, to issue a civil ticket. So that is another means. It's existing law, but graffiti can be enforced by our CSOs, for example, and also by our housing inspectors, for example.
That's a good point, because it's a civil offense.
Thank you. Is the committee comfortable with moving this version forward to the city council?
Yes.
Okay, the we'll move to, recommend this ordinance, council, and then you recommend it more in. The council does that.
The council does, but yeah, you could just recommend to move it forward with your recommendation.
We recommend more. Okay. That is the motion made by Becca.
So could you just repeat the
Where
motion, please?
the ordinance committee moves to recommend this ordinance to the city council for warning.
Is it, this is for first reading or for
first reading.
for first reading?
Yeah, so,
Thank you. And it seems clear with there's absent some request by the council on first reading that we would not need to get this referred back to us. So,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we need to put it out to the rest of the council and as well as the public. This is not without controversy. I don't think we fast track it. I think we received that comment and if there's reason to send it back, I'm sure they will, but that I wouldn't expect it necessarily.
Can I ask a quick question? Is there a way that, like, I would love to see this move forward and then also hear from the mayor's office about, like, potentially a parallel plan for enforcing this new ordinance or communicating about it. Is there a way we can, like, formally ask for that, or does that need to come on council?
I think this committee could ask, do we have anybody? I think this committee could ask for that.
Yeah, since it's just a request anyway, and I'll be speaking with Eric later today, so I can pass it.
Okay, because I think without that type of coordinated effort, this is, just very symbolic, and I think there's broad consensus that that's not the approach that we need. So I would love to put some more teeth into this or add on to this. But I think we need a second for that motion.
So I would second the motion, and to the extent to which it includes a request for the administration to report to the council about activities to publicize and educate and enforce the ordinance as is and as may be amended. I think that would be appropriate within that motion.
That's friendly to you,
Yeah.
Becca? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of recommending this ordinance to the city council with a request to the mayor's administration that we be provided information about how this will be a plan for enforcement going forward. Please say aye.
So actually that's you did not state that correctly. It was for first reading, and it's a request that includes the education and publicity.
Yes. Education and as well as a plan, right?
I think that's what I just got scam mail from allegedly Emma, but it wasn't. So I had to check to see if she was actually listening into this meeting.
Right. That's fair.
So I didn't quite get it, but I think that Joseph would get the motion on tape, since he does such an amazing job with
He does an excellent job. But if you can just clarify the last part, which is education, a plan for enforcement.
Well, publicity, it's education, it's publicity, and enforcement.
Yeah, okay. I think that's good. Thank you for restating, Jean. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And that is unanimous. Yay,
Thanks.
we got something out.
Later.
We got something out of committee. Let me cross that off.
which will be announced. Thank
They
you.
celebrate.
Let's do it. Back up, no.
I'm joking, it was a joke, let the record reflect.